Hello there, Cliff here, back from my 5th week progress update. This week I'm going to switch things up. I'm not going to go through everything in the video. If you want to see that stuff, you can look at the image gallery, which there'll be a link in the description. Instead, I'm just going to focus on a few things to give a general sense of what I'm doing and specific things I learned. So starting the week, I was feeling a lot more confident, as I said last week, so I decided to put more time into things. Here's a couple warm-ups that I did that I actually put more time into. So this was, maybe 30 minutes or so, where in the past, my warm-ups have been 10 minutes maybe. And then at this point, I don't necessarily call them a warm-up. I just kind of start drawing lines and do it for a while. And then here's another one, which this probably took an hour or so. It was a lot of circles to draw. I have mixed feelings on this one. I think it looks okay, but it really actually wasn't that much fun to do. So I'm not sure how much of this exact kind of thing I'll do in the future. So this week I continued working through Botany for the Artist. I was just drawing some things out of it and trying to put a little bit more shading and things like that into it. These were some sketches where I got a new fountain pen. This is just with the fountain pen, and then these are using the fountain pen and some brush pens with ink in them. These don't, I don't feel like these came out very well. I made some mistakes in the middle. So I started by penciling them in, and then I went over them and outlined them with the fountain pen. But then I started brushing in the background, and everything up to that point looked okay until I started putting in detail, and I didn't feel like, especially after putting in detail with the brush pen, I didn't feel like the separation from the background was good enough. So I started darkening the background, but the ink wasn't flowing very well, and it created this sort of texture on the background. And at the time it was fine, but then as I continued putting in detail, there was texture in the background, there was texture in the foreground in the fungus, and it ended up clashing where the background and the foreground both had a lot of busy texture going on. I ended up blacking it out as much as I could, and I think this made it a little bit better. But what I kind of learned from it was that contrast in detail is really necessary. And this makes sense because I've done some photography before, and that's the same idea with bokeh and depth of field, is you want to create that sort of separation. Unfortunately, I didn't photograph it at those points. I did try to recreate that situation with a few drawings. So here's one where I just did an outline and textured in the background. And I think this looks okay. It's a sort of like negative space kind of drawing. But then here's another one where the background's kind of plain and the foreground just has texture. And I think this also looks okay. But then when you combine the two, I think it really falls apart and kind of clashes. And none of these look great, but hopefully it kind of shows the idea. I tried to create the same idea with these two paintings, but so this was sort of an experiment. So the problem was that I introduced a stylistic difference. So where this would be the foreground and background is textured, I actually think it looks okay because it's stylistically sort of realistic. Where this is stylistically not realistic, and I think it looks much worse. In fact, I think it looks terrible. So I guess when you are trying to experiment or learn about, when you're doing an experiment to learn something about art, it's the same concept applies from, like scientific experimentation where you really need to control what variables you're changing. And here I changed, color, style, all kinds of things, and I think it caused problems where this didn't show the concept that these showed. Okay. I did some more drawings out of the book. And then I started doing some doodles with the fountain pen. I don't know, I think it was something about just the darkness of the line, and it made me want to do a bunch of lines and cross-hatching and stuff. It ended up kind of similar to what Peter Draws does, and I thought it was just an interesting thing to have a change in my tools create a change in my drawing. It's not necessarily an endorsement for going out and buying a bunch of stuff, but when you get a chance, trying different things could definitely create changes in what you do. So here's another thing that I put a lot more time into. This is not with the same fountain pen, but it's with one of those micron pens where I just stippled for, I think this took close to 2 hours. And I think it came out really nice, honestly, for what it is. I couldn't think of anything to put with it, so I just left it as it is. I did some more of that, so this is another one doing the same thing, which again I think came out fairly nice. I don't think the composition is that great, but looks kind of cool. Then I was just playing around with it some more. That's it for that. Okay. At the end of the week, I did play around with doing some watercolors and then inking over it. And this isn't amazing, but overall I like the way it came out. There's some points on this where I feel like I overworked it. Like I shouldn't have put so much stippling in these areas. I think it just started to detract from the painting a bit, but overall I'm fairly pleased with this. And again, this probably took 2 hours or so. So finally, at the end of the week, I was kind of worn out from doing drawings that were taking so long. So I just did a bunch of these large charcoal on newsprint drawings, which I think are really satisfying to do. They don't necessarily look great, but I just, burned through a bunch of newsprint doing this. And overall, I think this is super satisfying to do, even though you don't necessarily get great art or something out of them. I think just for drawing and relaxing, this is, to me, the kind of perfect sort of thing to do. So yeah, I did this a few times. Okay, well, thanks for watching. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them below. Next week, I do want to go back and do some more composition. I had intended to do that this week, but it just never panned out. So hopefully next week I'll actually get to that. I'll probably continue working out of Botany for the Artist, and I have a couple other books I might start using So we'll see what happens. Thanks for watching.